We've got Femi Femo Atidile Fidipote.
That's me.
She's right here.
Good morning.
Great to have you here. Femi, how's it going? How are you?
Good, thank you.
I was not here earlier this week and I thought Tufai was speaking in tongues, but he's speaking about the house that he belongs to.
The ruling house.
Yes.
Princess
Good morning.
Good morning.
Adefemi.
That's me. Good morning. Good
Akisoya.
morning,
Femi, how are you? So demure.
Thank you for trying. I'm in wonderful company as always, isn't it? Wonderful examples you are all setting. Good morning to you all and good morning to your viewers. Let me tell you what's happening around the world. Now, US President Donald Trump has once again declared that Christians in Nigeria and indeed around the world are facing an existential threat and has vowed to save them. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Humanity is facing an existential threat in Nigeria. Thousands and thousands of Christians are being killed. Radical Islamists are responsible for this mass slaughter. I am hereby making Nigeria a country of particular concern. That's a legal definition. When the Christians or any such group is slaughtered, like is happening in Nigeria, 3,100 versus 4,476 worldwide. What horrible numbers. Something has to be done. I am asking Congressman Riley Moore, together with Chairman Tom Cole and the House Appropriations Committee, to immediately look into this matter and to report back to me. And I mean, like, immediately. The United States cannot stand by while such atrocities are happening in Nigeria and numerous other countries. It's not only Nigeria, it's all over. We stand ready, willing, and able to save our great Christian population around the world. This is not going to happen. The killing of Christians is not going to happen.
Well, as we've just heard in that new video released and shared by the White House media team, Trump has vowed to defend persecuted Christians here in Nigeria and around the world. While his comments have been welcomed by Christians home and abroad, they've also drawn criticism from rights groups who accuse him of using religion to stoke fear and influence voters ahead of midterm elections in November 2026. Something to bear in mind. Well, let's head over now to Mexico, where President Claudia Sheinbaum has vowed to press charges after she was groped by a man during a public event. Now, the incident, which was caught on camera, shows a man kiss Sheinbaum's neck before grabbing her chest area from behind. Now, his actions have sparked outrage across the country and indeed the world. Now, the president herself, known for her firm stance on women's rights, said that the act was not just a personal violation, but an example of the daily harassment women face in Mexico. Authorities say the suspect has been identified, arrested, and an investigation is underway. Now, let's go over to South Africa. The High Court in Johannesburg has ordered an anti-migrant group to stop blocking foreign nationals from accessing public health facilities and schools, calling such actions illegal. Now, Operation Dudula has been picketing hospitals and clinics in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal provinces, checking identity cards and stopping anyone who is not South African from entering. This harassment has also been extended to schools. Now, migrants represent some 4% of South Africa's population. That's around 2.4 million people, most of them from Lesotho, Zimbabwe and Mozambique. Now, xenophobia does remain an issue in South Africa, which has been accompanied by occasional outbursts of deadly violence, and anti-migrant sentiment has continued to become a key political talking point. Well, before I come over to my wonderful colleagues for their thoughts, let's take a look at our newspaper headlines from Nigeria and indeed the world. Firstly, let's begin with the front page of This Day. Now, This Day does report that the federal government has dismissed US President Donald Trump's claim of a Christian genocide here in Nigeria, insisting that it is based on faulty data. Now, ministers Mohammed Idris and Yusuf Tugar have maintained that insecurity affects both Christians and Muslims, while Festus Keyamo described President Tinubu as a moderate Muslim himself, committed to religious tolerance. Now, if we step away from ministers and the federal government, now, human rights lawyer Femi Falana, who's a senior advocate of Nigeria, had faulted Trump's claim also. He says that the killings are driven by criminality rather than religion. Meanwhile, the Campaign for Democracy warned that Sheikh Ahmed Gumi's recent comments could strain Nigeria-US relations further. A lot to discuss there. Let's take a look at the New Telegraph this morning. And the New Telegraph does lead with the federal government's claim that foreign lobbyists are responsible for fueling these claims. That's what the federal government has to say, still on this message about targeting killings and accusations of Christian persecution in Nigeria. Again, the Information Minister, Mohammed Idris, has dismissed these claims, calling it misleading and saying that insecurity affects all Nigerians. We have Minister Dele Alake, who is the Minister of Solid Minerals. He accused opposition figures of fueling this crisis in order to discredit the Tinubu administration. That is the lead story on the New Telegraph. Moving over to The Punch, and we widen out the conversation. Just this story here caught our eye. We've got Wole Soyinka saying that he himself predicted that there would be a mass revocation of US visas and green card. That's following the withdrawal of his own visa by the US government. Now, in an interview he did with BBC Pidgin, he talks about how he foresaw these actions under President Donald Trump's comments and his presidency, especially the second term. He described it as petty-minded and described him rather as a petty-minded dictator. Very strong words. Now, the US mission here in Nigeria has clarified that visas are a privilege, not a right, and may be revoked at any time. Now, Soyinka, who vowed never to reapply, said that he left the United States voluntarily rather than being kicked out. Still on the front page of The Punch, the headline is talking about the politics of what we're seeing happening within the PDP. They're calling it a power showdown. Wike bloc is defiant as PDP Board of Trustees insists on a convention. That is what we're seeing here. And this is despite, of course, the directive for it to proceed. The PDP's secretariat remains sealed. Both factions continue to lay claim to the party's leadership. A whole lot of hullabaloo going on there. Let's move over to the Daily Independent. Now, the Daily Independent reports that Nigeria lost $300 billion to crude oil theft by the Senate. It's a story that we took across different papers yesterday, but of course, it's still gathering steam. Plans about phasing out petrol cars and considering electric vehicle bill is something that's also being discussed within the upper echelons of our legal system. So we'll have to see what goes on there. But again, this investigation was led by Senator Ned Nwoko, and the committee did blame poor regulation and weak monitoring and called for tighter enforcement and new security technology to combat crude oil theft. Moving on to The Guardian this morning. The Guardian just called for a referendum in Nigeria's constitution. Now, calls for such a referendum are definitely gaining momentum. That's as legal experts, civil society groups, and regional bodies are demanding more people-driven charters. Now, senior lawyers describe the absence of a referendum clause as a major flaw, while groups like Afenifere, Pandef, and Horuwa are faulting lawmakers for blocking its own inclusion. To the Daily Trust this morning, and the Daily Trust does look at indigenous contractors continuing their protests for their pay. They are saying that the National Assembly and indeed those levels of government and governance have been paying foreign contractors while neglecting their own bills. So they vow to continue their protests. These protests have continued now for a second day, and they say that they will continue coming out to protest until they get paid. Let's move over to our next paper this morning and take a look at the front page of Kenya's Daily Nation. Senior school fees shocker for parents. So what we're seeing here is the government has scrapped free senior school tuition and it has cut funding per student by half. Now, for the first time since 2015, day school and boarding school learners will have to pay higher fees annually. This is a move expected, of course, to strain parents under this new education guideline. The paper also reports that the government has reached a deal to end the 49-day university lecturers' strike, agreeing to pay 7.6 billion shillings in arrears and to reinstate all dismissed staff. And before we come over to my wonderful colleagues, let's take a look at some British papers this morning. I'll stay in the middle. We've got the Mirror and the Daily Express, and they are both leading with these growing prison crisis happening in the United Kingdom. So the Daily Mirror, for example, its headline is saying essentially not again. We see it along the bottom here. And it does report that 2 or more prisoners had been mistakenly released again. This is sparking outrage and prompting criticism from Labour's Deputy Prime Minister, of course, David Lammy, who described the justice system as failing. Similarly, the Daily Express also leads with this story, this shocking release of an Algerian sex attack convict, highlighting how a convict migrant was wrongfully freed despite earlier promises of tighter security checks. Now, both papers say that the blunder has triggered a nationwide manhunt and renewed pressure on the government to act. So those are your well-briefed stories, and those are your newspaper headlines from across the world. Love to hear your thoughts.
Isn't it shocking that we are still talking about the massive corruption of the Conservative government with COVID-19 in the UK?
Okay, there's that too.
A company owned by some of those. You know, in the UK too, the corruption is just so annoying. Boris Johnson pretty much gave his friends and donors free PPE contracts here and there. A lot of them didn't even bring PPE. It's a monumental scale corruption. And you can see some of the companies, they couldn't even pay their taxes when they folded up. 39 million, 40 million pounds owing the government in taxes because of the corruption by Boris Johnson. Let me quickly go to Trump talking again. See, we have said this thing. My point is clear on it. We don't need Trump to come and tell us what we already know. As I was speaking on the air, somebody sent me another article of the person is a rice farmer. He wrote that article way back 2019. The article was written way back 2019 of all these problems that we're having today, the killings. But government never solved it. So it's a carry on, and we should be careful. All we're just saying is end the killings. That's just it. I'm happy Claudia Sheinbaum is taking that case up with that man.
Absolutely.
No, you cannot go and grope a woman, like, let alone a president. You can see that's the kind of nonsensical mindset some men have. You see a woman and all the thing you think of is sex, groping. No, you can't even see a woman as a precious material put there by God. You can't see a woman as a co-equal and accountable for success and development. So it's a mindset thing. And that's why you see some men in India, they go out, they rape women and some other parts of the world. So I'm very happy she should take up charge. It is going to be the first of its kind. They should not beg her. The man must go to jail. The man that did that must go to jail. That's just it. Yeah. We can't live in an insane society. I yield the floor.
I think the man was very intentional. You know, Mexico is a country that has ingrained machismo and ingrained chauvinism, whereby women are seen to be, they have the right to accost a woman, to touch a woman without permission because you're a man and is a woman. And it's there. In fact, femicide is a big issue in Mexico, whereby 98% of murders motivated by, against women have been unsolved. There's no consequence for that. And so it was a big statement to say that you're a woman, I can just hit you here and there. How many men have been groped in public like that? And I think that is addressing the core issue. The fact that she's the first female president of Mexico is a big statement on its own, that women have now gotten a place on the table in Mexico. But beyond that is even to challenge the mindsets of men themselves to see that it's not okay. You cannot speak, talk, or hit a woman anyhow because you feel that, oh, I have your type at home, as you often say, as we would say. And I'm glad that she's pressing charges, and you can begin to see when the woman is in power, if the president can be handled in this manner, you can imagine what other women in Mexico are facing. And we see it in other parts of the world. It's not just Mexico. So I'm hoping that it will make an example of this man and that we'll begin to take things very seriously. Now, beyond that, let me go to the Nigerian situation, and I want to just appeal again to different government functionaries, agencies, leaders, to have a coordinated communication approach. Enough of granting interviews where you're stoking the fire even more, because once you begin to speak out of turn and point fingers and say it's the media, it's opposition, or you politicize it, you're making the matter worse rather than trying to find a solution. We should be solution-driven right now. What can we do to get ourselves out of this mess? And even most importantly, what can we do to secure the lives of Nigerians who have been crying out for many years? Absolutely. Indeed, this administration inherited the problem. It didn't start under the Tinubu administration, but it was not contained under this administration. And successive governments or previous governments have come up on the campaign of, we're going to fix insecurity. That is how Buhari got into power. He was saying that he had said that, Jonathan administration did not handle Boko Haram adequately, and he was coming as a former general. Nigerians expected that he was going to come in and decimate the terrorists. It didn't happen in 8 years. In fact, if anything, they got more emboldened, more brazen, and you'd even see them making videos of their atrocities. And so what the Tinubu government should do now is, rather than trying to save face and point blames, let the Minister of Information, who has spoken quite well in that press conference, continue to lead the conversations, and let every other person keep quiet and continue to push religious tolerance, religious harmony, push the fact that in Nigeria, protected by law, guaranteed by the Constitution, religious freedom, and demonstrates very clearly to Nigerians first and then the international world what the government is doing to promote religious freedom and to promote the lives and properties of both Christians, Muslims, and every other Nigerian, living here. I think that's the most important and powerful message we should be seeing here. No more rhetorics, enough politicizing of lives and properties and insecurity in Nigeria. Let's get to work and let Nigerians see the evidence of that work.
Absolutely. Very well said. I mean, I sincerely can't say it any better than that. When I think of the issues, for me, it keeps sending me back to the 19th century. In fact, I had to watch a documentary the other day when Usman Dan Fodio moved into northern Nigeria. And you look at that situation 200 years later and how that has influenced some movements and how that has influenced some of the things we see today. And we ask, well, how have we made an attempt to balance this with regards to the fact that the world has evolved drastically since then? So I think our inaction in countering, or rather in creating a balanced environment of coexistence, we've evolved as people since 200 years ago. So I always, go back to that example of Usman Dan Fodio and how that jihad came into northern Nigeria. But, since then we've evolved as a people. However, we can't allow economic situations, geopolitical tensions to cause situations where people now hijack some of these religions and turn to extremism and turn it to criminality. Now, on Donald Trump, he had a very busy day yesterday, a very busy 24 hours, because he also gave his anniversary speech, because yesterday marked 1 year, I believe, since his election. He also took a swipe at South Africa. He made it official that he won't be attending the G20 in South Africa, went as far as saying that, in fact, South Africa doesn't deserve to be part of the Gs. So he's also started a campaign where he's trying to remove South Africa from the G20. I'm bringing this up because it goes back to our issues around social contract again. In South Africa, issues of xenophobia, Operation Dudula. You won't have a group like Operation Dudula who go around harassing foreign nationals. Mind you, they don't harass Caucasians. They harass African foreign nationals and block them from accessing healthcare and so forth. And this is because they feel their government is failing them. So everything goes back to social contract. Are our African governments meeting the needs of the people? Now, there's a lot of dispute around the legality or illegality of illegal immigrants being granted access to free healthcare. So some countries allow it, some countries don't. Generally, they say it's allowed for emergency cases. But that's really the crux of the matter here, is that Operation Dudula is saying these people are illegals and they shouldn't become oppressive to our healthcare system, because now we as South Africans are not even able to access the healthcare because our system is overwhelmed. It's all about, a failure of social contract. African leaders, African governments, we just need to do better.
Absolutely.
We need to do better.
Donald
Trump still doesn't have a right, to get involved in our affairs without invitation. However, we must do better.
Yes.
There's
responsibility to go
other
around.
people can now have the audacity and impetus to put their business where it's not, especially when we feel ourselves. Thank you so much,
Always a pleasure.
Adifemi. Always great to have you on the show.